A very important number was passed on to Congress last week. That number is shocking. It's 13,000. 13,000 unauthorised immigrants with murder convictions here and overseas are living in the United States. That's according to the latest data from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE. These 13,000 unauthorised immigrants are part of ICE's non-detained docket, meaning the agency has some information on the immigrants and they have pending immigration cases in the United States. They are not currently in detention because they are perhaps not prioritised for that purpose. They may already be in federal or state prison, or perhaps ICE simply cannot find them.
That's cold comfort. A spokesman for the Department of Homeland Security said the data sent to Texas GOP Congressman Gonzalez is being misinterpreted. That's what CNN claimed. DHS also told CNN that the number 13,000 goes back at least 4 decades, long before the Biden administration was in place. That also seems like cold comfort. Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "Under Kamala Harris, more than 13,099 convicted murderers crossed our borders and were set free into the United States of America, so they're free to kill again," unquote. Continuing with his rhetoric, Trump wrote, quote, "But the incredible thing is that the fake news media does everything possible not to pick this story up."
I just say this. To all rapists, drug dealers, human traffickers, and murderers, welcome to America. It is important that you send a thank you note to Lion Kamala Harris, because without her, you would not be here. But we don't want you here, and you're going to get the hell out very soon. We're getting you out.
Michael Schellenberger wrote on X, quote, "No matter your politics, these are new numbers. They're shocking. Of the 7 million migrants that ICE released while their cases are being processed, 663,000 have criminal histories, 13,000 were convicted of homicide, 16,000 of sexual assault, and 1,845 facing homicide charges." So this does go back longer than the current administration. I think it's more than anything a testament to vast government incompetence, to lose track of people who are on the radars of law enforcement and might have criminal backgrounds. Because look, this is what turns everyone against the idea of immigration in the first place, is when you have criminals, some violent or dangerous criminals, released into the country and nothing being done about it. And they just say, "Oh, we lost track of them." Now, some might just be serving time for other sentences, and so they are behind bars. But it is not, as I said several times during my read, I think that is not very comforting to the American people.
No, it's definitely not comforting. And look, I know I'm sitting in the nominally liberal or left-wing seat here, but there's no way I can defend that or minimise it. 13,000 people with murder convictions, 16,000 with sexual assault convictions. The quote that you read from Michael Schellenberger, I think, was quite right, that whatever one's politics, that is something to be concerned at the very minimum about. I mean, those are crazy numbers. Yes, they came in over decades. Yes, it does include people who are in fact are in prison, which I suppose, I mean, it's certainly better than them roaming around, right. But an indeterminate number are roaming around. I mean, that is just a terrifying statistic. And I think, for what it's worth, that sometimes the left takes a little bit too much refuge in things like saying, for example, well, unauthorised or illegal immigrants commit crimes at a proportionately lower rate than native-born citizens. That's true, but I don't see how it neutralises something like this, which is pretty horrifying, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when many Americans feel like, well, they've already committed a crime of coming in illegally, right. So there is some there should be some extra ability to do something because they're already on not so solid ground in terms of their legal standing in this country. And I don't have so much of a problem. I mean, I would like for everyone to come in legally. I would like to make it easier to do that. I want now, if your only crime is coming here illegally and you are working and you are not just a drain on the social services and you do not have a criminal background beyond that, then do I want to spend law enforcement resources to remove you from this country? No. And I think we would probably end up having to create this vast surveillance network to accomplish that. But if you have a criminal record, particularly a violent criminal record, well then yes, the government has to do something about that, or the American people clearly demand it. Look at polling numbers. This is what they want. The American people have indicated this is Donald Trump's winning issue. This is the thing where there is the most sympathy for what Republicans want to do versus where Kamala Harris and Joe Biden stand, because of the perception that not enough has been done.
I want to pick up on that point because it gets to something that I really think about a lot on this story and some other immigration stories. There's a phrase that sort of critiques, from a liberal figure, but that critiques liberals or the left or Democrats sometimes. A guy by the name of Rui Teixeira, who's a sort of think tank guy here in Washington, has a phrase about what he calls the Fox News fallacy that Democrats or liberals sometimes engage in. And it's the logical fallacy that you see quite commonly on that side, which is if Fox News is amplifying a story or concentrating on it, therefore it must be false.
Nothing to it, yeah.
Or therefore it must be something that people aren't concerned about. And I think that's a point or an idea that we see getting replicated again and again. 13,000 murders. There are lots of people who are genuinely concerned about that for completely obvious reasons.
Yeah, and then it gets into some granular questions. Well, why aren't these things being investigated? I mean, police have been, it depends on the municipality, but for instance, in the District of Columbia, I believe the clearance rate for violent criminal cases, I think for murders, I will need to double check this, I'm not 100% sure. I believe it has gone down somewhat significantly in the last couple of years. That could be for a variety of reasons. One is I'm only speaking for the District of Columbia, where I live and have some familiarity with. There are fewer police officers than there were before. There are some jurisdictional problems between the city and the federal government. There was a problem with the crime lab losing its certification. Anyway, these are procedural issues, government competence issues. It doesn't really need to be partisan, or it's not because, I mean, the city's Democrat-run, obviously, but it's not because of some massive political conflict between Republicans or Democrats or some really deeply held partisan ideological reason that things should be run this way rather than that. It's just a matter of incompetence. It's a matter of not putting resources where they would do the most good or being hamstrung by whatever processes are in place.
Yeah, which is obviously especially dangerous when we have such a grave matter as these extremely serious crimes and people not being found exactly where people are or how they can be apprehended. And I do think just on the immigration point as it relates to that, there is, I think, look, there are people who are hostile to immigrants for all sorts of awful, horrible, unjustifiable reasons. There are xenophobes, there are racists, there are people who are nativists. There are also people who are concerned about statistics like this because they seem to speak to such a lack of, to your point, government competence and a sort of a disregard for the public safety issues that arise here. And that's a serious problem.
I mean, I want the murderers investigated and arrested and locked up regardless of whether they're immigrants or not, or they're illegal or not.
Yeah.
And, to be clear, I looked, the murders in D.C. were so high 2 years ago. Crime has come down a little bit. They were just astronomically, anomalously high either 2 or 3 years ago. And but now it's not all illegal immigrants.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
A lot of gang violence and crime typical. Now, gangs can obviously have illegal immigrant variants and strains, but it's a lot of criminal activity from the lower class, more economically borderline populations that you would suggest, and we need to confront that problem.
Yes, we are anti-murder rather than anti-immigrant.
Anti-murder. We're charting bold new stances here on Rising.
Strongly
I'm against murder. I don't care. Who knows? More Rising right after this.